All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So I'm bringing you another wonderful, wonderful human to have a beautiful conversation with, Kelley Hunter, today. And many of you probably already know Kelley Hunter, but I will briefly introduce you, Kelley. So Kelley is an astromythicist, and I would love for you to explain exactly what that means. But Kelley is an astrologer, and you've written multiple books on topics ranging from the Lilith and the divine feminine within astrology and within mythology. And also you wrote and drew, illustrated your Kuiper Belt. No, sorry, your coloring book of what's the title of the
Planetary Gods and Goddesses coloring book.
Yes, exactly. And which I have and which I love and which I reference often. And the reason I originally got connected with you was because of your beautiful work with the Kuiper Belt Objects. And I first saw you on interviews with Pam Gregory and immediately loved them. And then, yeah, I love the connection that we've developed since then. So, and for people watching, Kelley and I have previously done at least one interview.
I think
At least one,
two.
maybe
Well, the
two. Yeah.
workshop, the Cosmic Feminine, and
Yes.
then we did one on cosmic couples.
Cosmic couples, exactly, which
Yeah,
was one of my favorite conversations ever. That was so great. So definitely highly recommend. I'll link that video with this video. And yeah. So anyway, welcome, Kelley, again. Really.
thanks, Martha. Yeah, that was great. The cosmic couples was a new idea for me to work with. And, I was just kind of raw into it. And, you helped kind of flesh that out and got me kind of spiffed up in some, especially with the Charclo Chiron connection. And I've been developing that a little more because I think it's so interesting in the times of the divine feminine arising to match the divine masculine and finding a different dynamic in relationships based on that on many different levels of astrology. Astrology has all these different levels. And that's what excites me about the Kuiper Belt. It's a whole nother level because
Yeah.
the Kuiper Belt, Pluto's on the front edge of this Kuiper Belt that goes out quite a ways, and the astronomers are discovering more and more what we could call planetoids. Some they're calling dwarf planets. Sometimes they refer to them as planetesimals, which I
Oh,
love
wow.
that word. But they're small like Pluto. Some of them have moons or companions. And because they ran out of underworld gods or knew they were going to, they started using names of global mythologies, indigenous creator gods and goddesses. And that's what excited me immensely about the Kuiper Belt. And that's why I wanted to introduce them, especially to the children coming in under them. And I said, well, while I'm doing this coloring book, I might as well do the whole planetary, realm, which was quite an adventure. And I want to share that adventure with you today,
Yeah.
because it was quite an adventure to enter that realm. And something was going on in my consciousness. One of my friends saw this whole circle of archetypes around me at that point. And I feel like to some extent I was. And that's it. There was this circle, almost like a halo.
Mm.
And this happened for me right after there were rings discovered around Chariclo. That was
Wow.
in 2013-14. I think they announced it in 2014.
Mm.
Or maybe, yeah. And so this was very exciting, because I'm one of the people who have Chiron conjunct Chariclo, conjunct my sun's sign. So this was very meaningful to me and part of what got me into cosmic couples. So we are really in integrating that into our astrology more these days, because Characlo is one of those archetypes that really grabbed a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And that she was, discovered to have these two very small, thin rings was quite astounding to the astronomers. And, kind of like a double halo. And so something about my studies with Characlo led me into the Kuiper Belt. And I don't even exactly remember how. But one of the things was she doesn't come closer than Saturn. She doesn't come through that orbit like Chiron does into kind of the material realm with that Saturn activation and manifestation energy. She veers out more toward Neptune, and therefore the trans-Neptunians, which is the Kuiper Belt. And so they became very interesting to me. And so most of my research was going on in relation to drawing them and figuring out what their mythologies were about. So this took me about a year, and I was I picked a roster of about 14. And just before I was saying, okay, these are the ones I'm doing, I got an email, Philip Sedgwick's Galactic Astrology newsletter. And he was saying there was one of these Kuiper Belt objects had just been named, and it had been named Promzus, who was a Lithuanian god of peace and friendship, so it says on the NASA website that talks about all these like small bodies in the solar system. It's a really useful website. That you can look up all the moons of Jupiter. They're way into the 60s now. There are over 60 moons of Jupiter now.
What's this website? What's the name of it?
Let's see, I've got it here. I always forget, it's the small data, SSD, that's the small ssd.jpl, which is for Jet Propulsion Laboratory, .nasa.gov.
Wonderful. I'll put it with this. I'm going to definitely look at
SSD is something about the small object database. And you can look up, they have a search bar, so you can look up any of these things and get all kinds of information, like who discovered it, where did they discover it, what is its name, just a brief description of that name. And so I thought, wow, peace and friendship, I've got to add that one into my roster.
Wow. So can I pause you for 1 second so I can give context to everybody of the story you're telling?
Yes.
So what I love about this, Kelley, is that as you know, but for anybody who doesn't know who's listening, you're going to be one of the guest speakers in the an astrology course that I'm going to be hosting next year. And I had this very clear vision of I was given the vision of the course by the spirit world. And it's really what they're calling it is it's a portal of remembering. It's even more than an astrology course. It's meant to be a space of holding for us each to come into our own relationship with life, with the cosmos, with the inner wisdom that is each of us, right? That we're innately beings of the cosmos, wise wisdom keepers of the cosmos. And I was shown very specific people who are meant to get the guest speakers in this course. And you were one of those people. And so what I love about the story that you're starting to dive into is that I think I didn't even really consciously know this about you, but I know it just from being with you. And you're now kind of proving this, that I feel you as having a very powerful personal connection to astrology, to the cosmos, to these cosmic beings. Am I accurate in that assumption?
I would call them that.
Okay, but I mean, in terms of you having your own personal
Oh
relation.
gosh, yes. I mean, I've been in astrology for over 50 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
you find your own path in
Mm-hmm.
astrology. Some people get way into the asteroids, some people get way into kind of research or the Uranian planets or the, Melanie and the centaurs or, however it is. And Lilith was one thing that really grabbed my attention. And she came definitely, we're like, okay, you talk to me.
Yeah.
And now the Kuiper Belt, also a new kind of area of pioneering, really, because it's a whole different realm in the solar system.
Yeah. And so what I love is that one of the things I feel the most passionately about in this moment of time is that we have, for many, many reasons, been in a mode of looking to outside authority figures, often white male authority figures, just to be blunt, but no, but outside authority figures of all kinds, to tell us the truth about everything, including about ourselves, right? So what I'm called to do in the world is to hold space, yes, to give guidance, but really the guidance is mostly about coming into the wisdom of each of our own way of knowing these things. So what I love about the story that you're about to tell is that I'm
Mhm.
guessing it's the story of you coming into your own relationship, your own kind of evolving knowing of these Kuiper Belt objects and maybe the cosmos in general. So that's what I find so beautiful about this, and why I'm really excited about what you're about to share. So I just want to give that context, and I want to give one more piece of context for people who aren't familiar with the Kuiper Belt. And you could add to this too, but just for people listening who aren't familiar with the Kuiper Belt, one of the reasons it's so exciting is because it's an area of space that is pretty newly known by our current science. And yeah, so Pluto was the first discovered Kuiper Belt object in 1930, and then what is it, around 2003-ish, four, that a whole nother set of Kuiper Belt objects started.
Certainly in the new millennium.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, and so they are objects that orbit the sun, either kind of in the area of Pluto or slightly further out, like Eris Xena goes, has almost the double orbit that Pluto does. But yeah, so it's a ring around our solar system that is of objects that have orbits ranging from about 200 and something years to 500 and something years, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like a far out asteroid belt.
Yeah. And then even further out, we have the Oort cloud, which is a whole other thing with Sedna and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
I don't
um,
know if there's an etc. yet. Do we have more things out there?
yes, I was just researching Sedna and I looked into the Oort cloud, and apparently there are a total of 4 Oort cloud objects now discovered, which anyway, that's a whole other subject. But one of them was named after a bird, which I find so interesting. And another one was named after Joe Biden.
Oh, please. Do we have to get political out there?
It's really, really funny. So that's a whole other thing. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking, how are we gonna how are astrologers gonna interpret something named after a bird? I mean, that's actually very beautiful in a certain way, really beautiful. But how in the world are we supposed to interpret something named after a president? that, that's a different subject.
I am
But
speechless.
yeah. So I haven't personally attempted to go there yet. But yeah, that's what I discovered when I looked into the Oort cloud.
Wow, that's interesting. That's news to me.
Mm.
Yeah, and so is the Kuiper Belt to so many people, as you're
Mhm.
saying. And so I'm seeing it this way. So we have, we're the Earth. We have the personal planets really nearby, Mercury and Venus and Mars. And then there's the asteroid belt that we have to like jump, like the asteroids are like rocks in a river, and we have to like, jump through the rocks to get to Jupiter. And then Jupiter and Saturn are what we call the social planets. And Saturn used to be, the outer band of the solar system planets as we knew. And then Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, that came in as more, I think of them as generational planets, collective consciousness planets. Not that they all aren't, but on another level, because they're in a sign for a number of years, and there are all these mini generations, like a 7-year Uranus generation, a 14-year Neptune generation, and then Pluto, which is, has different time frames. It's in Scorpio for like 12 years on the other side of the sky. When it's farther out, it goes through Taurus in about 30 years. So Pluto, yeah, now it's redefined in the Kuiper Belt range. So it's definitely an outlier and in its own way. And I did my master's degree in depth psychology and creative communication with my paper was called Mythology and the Psychological Value of Symbolic Language. Mm-hmm. It was in the early 80s when there were a lot of female Jungian psychologists coming out there and talking about the goddesses, and, the asteroid belt was happening. And so I was writing about this underworld journey because I was having Venus square my Pluto. And this work helped me process. So I was discussing 3 myths when the goddess goes to the underworld. So that was Demeter and Persephone, Inanna, and also Psyche and Eros. Psyche goes down to the underworld.
Beautiful, yeah.
So, and that I saw different themes in those different myths, and that was part of my process. To me, astromythology is the myths of the stars, the stories in the stars that are psychologically meaningful to us. And we learn these stories and we find our own story in those, archetypal stories. So I really was having a very strong journey at that point. And that definitely empowered my work and my understanding to a deeper level. Mm. So when and then Lilith came to me, and that was a whole different journey of learning about the different Liliths and tuning into the Black Moon, which is still a bit of a mystery, and I'm still evolving my my experience and understanding of the Black Moon to more of a deeper soul level. And
even though you've already written 2 books on Lilith, right?
I have, and now I have a whole new piece that I'm developing. Mm. So because that's to me, that's one of the 3 essential dynamics in the cosmic feminine, that we can work with in astrology. There's the moon, there's Venus, and then there's Black Moon. And I've been working with that theme for a while, and did that with you in the symposium last summer.
Which I
love. So the Kuiper Belt is a different realm. It's a different realm. And I'm thinking of it as a quantum realm, in part because this new millennium is getting very quantum. Yeah. There's people are talking quantum in so many ways, and there's even a U.S. Government website called quantum.gov, where they're talking about the applications of quantum physics in technology and in other ways. So, I was looking back at what is that quantum science, and years ago, and even in the early 1900s, Max Planck, Albert Einstein, and Niels Bohr were all very much investigating this realm of the quantum theory. And part of it is Bohr's theory that the mere act of indirectly observing the atomic realm changes the outcome of quantum mechanics. So we have an influence even in our observation, partly, I think, because we're coming with some kind of question or theory that may be impressed on it to prove our theory. And in a sense, that's what life is, right? That's what life is about. As we think and as we emote, the universe is responding to us. And that's being even found in the element of water and the new discoveries about water, that water talks back to us. That we are mostly made of water, salt water, which is important, and that that as we are thinking, our thoughts, kind of move through that medium, and life mirrors back to us. So, like you were saying, we can't look to an outer authority anymore, because it's only mirroring back what we think.
Mm.
And so the work that we're doing right now is deep inner work. And when we get to the quantum belt and we have the quantum Kuiper belt and we have, that level of consciousness developing, and we go, first of all, through a few of these Kuiper Belt objects like Pluto, like Orcus, the Etruscan god of the underworld, and there are a few more that have that dark passageway to go through to get to the further ones that are the realm of the creator gods and goddesses. Mm-hmm. And so that's the exciting part for me. But we do have to go through this journey to get there. Mm-hmm. And then these quantum Kuiper Belt objects, to me, are also reflective of the etheric realm. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did my Ph.D. on. My dissertation was entitled "In Search of Dark Matter," spelled with one T, mater, a mythopoetic study in imaginal cosmology. And I was talking about ether as the fifth element. And in my research, I was finding that in Buddhism, well, in Greek philosophy, we have the fifth element. In Hindu and in Buddhist philosophy, we have the fifth element. Not to mention that movie called The Fifth Element. So ether is said to be the element out of which all of the four elements emerge. Oh. Mm-hmm. And the Greeks call it our star body, basically. And so in Buddhist philosophy, there's the physical ether and the non-physical ether. So in the non-physical ether are our imaginal visions, our ideas. And when we have that idea, then it can be brought from the non-physical into the physical through that medium of ether. It requires intention and attention and certainly belief. So there's some new level of consciousness that we're being offered that engages us on a creative level that we haven't been as aware of in the fuller collective invitation that we're getting now, I think, from these Kuiper Belt objects.
Totally agree. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So when I was, researching these, and I found wonderful resources. So say, for instance, Promzus. So I go to the Virgin Islands where I used to live, and I go there basically every winter. And I was going down there right when I had just found out about Promzus as the god of peace and friendship, but also of destiny. And so I was going down and I was finding some resources online. And one was a picture of a ceremony in Lithuania, which is where Promzus is from. And one of the discoverers of Promzus was from Lithuania. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have Promzus. And so there was a ceremony going on in a large field, and in the middle of the field was a huge platform with a fire. And on the field were these concentric circles of women. in maroon skirts and white blouses, and it looked like they were like butterflies dancing. And so this was a fire ceremony from way back, way back. Fire ceremonies are pretty much universal, I think, in so many cultures. One of maybe the first ways of celebrating. So that was one. So I'm coming down to the Virgin Islands, and it's Easter week. So I get there the day before Palm Sunday, and my friend takes me to a ceremony on Peace Hill, where there were a lot of my friends there from when I used to live there. And so we had this this on Peace Hill, this kind of ceremony and a kind of group meditation, to kind of on Easter Sunday to celebrate the coming up week. It was really beautiful. So that was Peace Hill. And then later that week, there was the full moon. That is the full moon before Easter that, announces that Easter is coming. It's the full moon before Easter because Easter is always on the Sunday after the first full moon after spring equinox. So we were having a fire at this woman's house, and there were some of my friends there again. And so we had this fire ceremony, and this woman was from Lithuania. And her great uncle wrote the national anthem of Lithuania. And we were having a fire ceremony like I had seen online. And she showed me some pictures that she had from Lithuania, from this hill of witches where they have all of these carved statues. And it's kind of like a playground for kids. And I used the image of one of these statues. I had already seen it and I had already chosen it to work with my coloring book. And she had it, that picture.
Wow. Wow.
And then I said, well, do you know how to pronounce this? Because it's Praamzius.
Wow.
So she emailed one of her cousins. Her cousins emailed back, Praamzius.
Praamzius. Okay.
So that's how you pronounce it. It's probably more like Jus. I don't know, but that was the simple way. It isn't Praamzius or something like that. So anyway, this was part of my experiential research of having that experience and getting to know Praamzius through the ceremony, through this fire circle, and being on Peace Hill with a bunch of my friends, the god of peace and friendship. So this was, kind of remarkable, I thought.
Yeah.
That came to me right when, so I was like, did I bring my Praamzius material down with me, or did Praamzius bring me with him, kind of energy?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to let everybody know, Praamzius right now is at 25 Leo. It has an orbit of 281 years. So it's been in Leo since 2005-06, and it's in Leo for a couple of more years. It starts changing in 2027. And so just to mention that if it's at 25 degrees now, the Venus retrograde we're just, coming out of basically was circling that Praamzius energy and kind of weaving it into her exploration into our hearts.
And it'll be in a loose square to the new moon that we have coming up on November 13th, 2023, which will be at 20 of Scorpio.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's and just think, if you have that, also another way of finding your own connection in your own pathway into the Kuiper Belt, with some people don't even want to go there. It's like, oh, there's all this stuff in astrology. And sometimes even I can't follow certain discussions when people are bringing in all of these different things, it's like,
Yeah.
So, but they're invitations And so if you have Lithuanian heritage, that
Mm.
could be an interesting connection for you.
Mm.
If Since it was discovered on January 23rd of 2012, if that's your birthday, you might want to take note.
Say that again. What was the date?
January 23rd. So the sun would have been something like 3 degrees Aquarius.
Wow, yeah. My daughter was born March of 2012, and that's anyway, yeah, 2012 of course was a big year.
Yes, a big
Yeah.
year.
A big, big, big year. It definitely was a big year in my own life.
Uh-huh.
But for the world, lots of us talk.
So here I am talking like promise just this weird thing, right? Like, so, but if you have it in your chart strong, if you're, if you have that connection with the culture, and I think as we approach interpreting these objects, I think it's really important to take the cultural context of that creator God into our consideration.
Absolutely. And I feel like also to be really careful and honoring, and
Absolutely.
I always feel like it's just crucial for me, speaking for myself, to just know that I can't know, right? That there's a lot I just can't know about. I'm not Lithuanian. I don't have that as my heritage. I can't pretend to understand Lithuanian culture, even if I study it. So I would both want to study it and acknowledge I also don't know, no matter how much I've studied it, which I haven't at all. But if I had, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I get really nervous. Like I just did a workshop on Sedna, and I felt so nervous going into that workshop because um
Mm.
yeah, it felt so easy to misstep and to pretend that I know something that I cannot possibly know about Inuit culture, and it's just impossible. So yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And
Mm-hmm.
along that line, I want to introduce you to another one that,
Mm.
hasn't gotten a lot of press,
Yeah.
which is Teharonhiawako.
And how do you spell that one?
Teharonhiawako.
Beautiful.
So I was saying Teharonhiawako, and that is not correct. And I found out this way. So Teharonhiawako is from the Iroquois people. And there are a
Mm.
lot of nations within the larger, you know, um, different tribes within that larger nation of the Iroquois.
Mm.
From the northeast US into Canada,
Mm.
and actually down farther than I used to think. Apparently, they have history and sacred sites in even down to Kentucky.
Mm.
So this is a very broad area, and I live in that area. And I was born in Connecticut, which is somewhat in that area. So and I have Teharonhiawako on my Mercury. So I have it in a strong planetary place. I can tell you that Teharonhiawako has an orbit of 295 years, and that right now it is where did we say? It's in Pisces at
Right.
19 to 20.
Right. Kind of in a sort of opposition to Orcus, right?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so Teharonhiawako, there's a wonderful book I found that has not been published for too long. When was it published? It's somebody did his PhD basically on the myth of Teharonhiawako. It was published in 2013, and it's called The Rotinanshani,
Oh, wow. What's the subtitle there? I can't read it.
a traditional Iroquoian history through the eyes of Teharonhiawako and Sawiskara.
Wow,
And it
beautiful.
tells the whole story of Teharonhiawako, the creator god of the Iroquois, and Sawiskara, his evil twin brother.
Wow.
And so there were two objects, Teharonhiawako and a companion object. And wait a minute, I'm trying to remember the woman's name. Susan. There were two discoverers credited. There was a team of people who discovered this. It was one of those teams searching for small objects. And Susan, is it Benacci? Oh dear, I should really have looked this up before I got on here.
Okay.
The she was graduating, and so she was allowed to name this object that they discovered. Susan Benacci. Susan Benacci. And so I tracked her down, and I had to talk with her. And so she said that because there were two objects, she was looking for a mythology with two figures in it. And her family has ancestry in that area, Upper New York State. And so she knew something about that myth, and she thought that was appropriate.
Yeah.
So she gave it that name.
Wonderful.
And then I was invited on to a astronomy program called the Astronomy of the Haudenosaunee, which is one branch of the Iroquois Nation in Upper New York State. And it was given by the Six Nations University. And the man who was leading the class, started with some basic like stargazing stuff. And then he mentioned Teharonhiawako and got into that story a bit, because he was the creator god and he put the sun and moon in the sky. It's a whole complicated story. It's a very complicated story. And I actually haven't finished it yet, because it takes a lot of processing when you're getting into a new myth to kind of digest portions of it.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand and I said, there's all these new Kuiper Belt objects. And one was out there in the far solar system, and one of them was named Teharonhiawako. And he said, they didn't ask us. And that took me aback and really made me think about how we're approaching these new discoveries.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah. So many of them, are from indigenous cultures. Hawaii, as you said, the Inuit, India, Rapa Nui, the Easter Island. And I just have a little story about that too. I had someone on my one of my readers of Cosmic Inspiration News got in touch with me and said, I have a friend who knows the royal family of the Rapa Nui.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to see if I can get you in touch with them? Yes, So eventually the answer came back is like, they must get put upon by a lot of people. So anyway, the answer was, we don't want to talk to her. She would have to come here.
Oh.
And I thought not necessarily to talk to them, but to experience the culture.
Yeah. Right. Again, same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever we think the myth is, because, Easter Island is a very misunderstood place.
Yes. Right.
And so I also got information about that to look into, to overcome that false rumor that they cut down all their trees to move their statues, So anyway, that learning about that culture was very interesting to me, as I was researching Makemake. And I'm still not feeling like I have enough of an understanding to talk about it very much.
Well, and what I'm feeling is even a moment to just pause. I feel like this is a really important thing for all of us involved in the astrology world to just take a moment and really get this, right? That because something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how, again, it comes back to this honoring of our own wisdom, but it's also honoring of others' wisdom and others' sovereignty and others' beingness. I don't know what words to put to it exactly. Is that I still see in the astrology world so much of a tendency to feel like people, my sense is that people still feel like it's important to be the expert on everything.
When people call me an expert on the Kuiper Belt, it's like, oh, please. I might have been one of the first researchers, but there's no expert. No.
Right. And I actually, I mean, this might be a little out there, but I as I'm feeling it, I think it's actually true for me. I would say, I wonder if we could just sit with this idea of being an expert as actually being a domination experience.
Yeah, like I've got all the answers. Like,
yes.
What about your experience? What about that person's experience? And that's the way to be learning.
Exactly.
That's why, my experiential journey with Pramsus was very informative to me. And experiencing that fire circle at the house of a Lithuanian woman was pretty remarkable. So I'm not sure how I can, offer an interpretation based on that. But those, we could call them rituals, go way back. And also, meets the peace and friendship thing of like when a village dances together, when they have celebrations together. And that reminds me of the Quaoar, also the Los Angeles area of the Tongva people, where that singing and dancing, the creation into being, and also, so anyway, so this has been a really interesting journey. And I think we don't want to be too quick to apply interpretations in the standard way that we have been.
Yes. Oh, and I was just talking to actually Heather Ensworth about this, and to pretend that we have the answers about these beings, right? It feels. I'm curious how you feel about this. Another thing I've been really coming to in myself is that all of these cosmic beings in and of themselves are living entities. And so I feel the need, I feel the need to be honoring of and very respectful of the cultures whose names are being placed on these beings. And I also feel the need to be very honoring and respectful of the beings themselves, right? So like if I'm thinking of whichever one it is, let's take any of them, choose any. I have this instinct that I want to give them space to be who they actually are. And that might be something so far beyond what my human conception can possibly know ever, maybe in this lifetime, I don't know. And they might even be evolving, changing, just like.
But this is one of the things that I think the Kuiper Belt is offering, like an opening of our belief systems beyond our experience. And how can we be creator gods, or work with them if we have old belief systems that can be limiting? Or, mentioning Orcus, old agreements or oaths that are also outdated or inhibiting our growth. And let me tell you the story of Orcus, because I was totally ignoring Orcus. Orcus is like the punisher of those who don't keep their sacred oaths. That's what that was what came up. And so I wasn't paying much attention to Orcus until I was doing a chart for a woman who had Orcus conjunct to the degree her sun sign. And so I felt like I had to mention it. And so she said, oh, that's so interesting, because what I do is help people break their oaths.
Oh.
And it was like, that just opened my mind to the potential of Orcus not only to be an oath maker and, but an oath breaker.
Wow.
And I've come to really see that as the meaning, some of the meaning inherent in Orcus. Now, we don't necessarily have a cultural context, I think, that we need to be too careful about with Orcus. Not that we know a lot about Etruscan culture, everybody, but I do think that is an interesting way to consider the meaning of Orcus. And I've seen it be so busy in people's charts since then. And
So
it's right now, it's in Virgo. It's at 15, almost 16 Virgo.
would you consider, when you talk about oath breaking, what I'm associating with that, and tell me if I'm interpreting you correctly, is that we maybe have soul level contracts that maybe need to be broken, need to be
Yes.
released.
Yes, and I think that's why I thought that really made a lot of sense, because we're at the beginning of a new era,
Yes.
like
Yes.
such a huge era, and we cannot bring unfinished business. We cannot bring certain agreements that we don't even know we've made. Some of these are past life. And all this stuff is coming up for us. Aren't we all working through a lot of really intense stuff? And
Yes.
the world, there's unhealed history just breaking out all over the world.
Yeah.
So, in terms of so past lives, it could be ancestral and it could be collective. We have these collective oaths, like we all believe in the blue sky. We all have an agreement. The sky is blue. Maybe it's not on some other level.
Well,
You
through other
know,
eyes. Yeah, through other eyes, it wouldn't be blue. That's true.
yes. And so we have a collective agreement of reality, but reality is changing
You know what?
quite a lot.
I don't know if do you work with Nessus and Pholus at all?
No.
Um, so Orcus is actually opposite Nessus right now, and they both move, obviously slowly. So Nessus is one of the centaurs for people who don't know, but just on a really brief level, I definitely associate Nessus with ancestral healing in any of the centaurs, right? So to have Orcus opposite Nessus, that's really, really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of people have Orcus in Cancer. That would have been from let's see, Orcus, where are you? 1953 to 1978. So I do charts
Yeah.
for a lot of people. And that, to me, especially if there's a planet or sun or moon, that would definitely suggest, kind of ancestral agreements.
And
And
actually, yeah, my natal Orcus is at 28 of Cancer, squaring my nodes, and my nodes. I'm currently in my nodal reversal, so the eclipses we just had would have been squaring the Orcus of those of us who have Orcus in.
yeah,
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 nodal squares, you have to go through that planetary dynamic to fulfill your destiny.
yeah,
And so that could certainly mean that certain agreements that you don't even remember or know about are
yeah,
holding you back.
yeah, yeah. And I can say
Mhm.
I've been personally doing a huge amount of letting go of karmic stuff. And what I've been saying, getting told by the spirit world in general, not only for me, but just it's a kind of more universal message that's been wanting to come through a lot, is um they keep begging, like begging, please unhook from the old stories, please. And what they've been showing me is that it's also being very supported by the Scorpio energies and the Pluto scoring the nodes, and even Mars right now going to be traveling with the sun for quite a while in the month of November 2023 in Scorpio. And so they keep saying that can look scary, but it's not scary. Don't be like, I mean, yes, it might have other manifestations that can feel not fun. But the gift of it is we're trying to help. It's a helping of unhooking you from these old stories.
Yeah, well, we have, North Node in Taurus, Jupiter's there. So there's a lot of benefits, toward the Uranus, kind of freeing up from the old story, just letting it go.
Yeah.
Just let it go for now, and see what your experience is showing you.
Mm.
And you were talking about the centaurs, and Ixion was the father of a lot of the centaurs. Yeah,
Oh.
Ixion is another one I was totally ignoring. Like, I don't like him. He's like a nasty fellow,
Yeah. Right.
Because Ixion was a king of the Lapiths, a very ancient Greek. And the story is he was marrying this woman, Dia, and her father, was expecting, what you did in those days was you pay for the bride by giving horses or whatever. That I know there's another version of the story, but this is the one I'm most familiar with. And that Ixion didn't want to pay that. And so the father-in-law, got a little, and he said, okay, what about it? And Ixion said, well, you come here and I'll give you the horses. So when the other king got to Ixion's place, he fell into a fire pit that had been prepared for his death. And so this was terrible because it was supposedly the first kinship murder.
Oh.
And this was unforgivable. And he got exiled and he went crazy and he went mad. And Jupiter took a bit of pity and said, I should bring this guy up to Olympus and have a talk with him. So Ixion came up, or Ixion, as Heather Ensworth likes to say. I like that pronunciation. So up to Olympus he goes, and so he flirts with Juno, and he tries to seduce her. And Juno tells Jupiter, and Jupiter's like, "You're kidding," and she said, "No." So what Jupiter does is he makes a artificial, like a cloud image of Juno, and sure enough, Ixion takes her. And that's how the centaurs were created. They were the children of Ixion and the cloud Juno. That's one version of the myth. But that goes back with this, kind of the family stuff, that you were mentioning, some of the family healing, because that is not a very, kind of pretty birth with a, rape of an artificial Juno. Like, what is that? That's very strange story.
Well, and what another Heather made a whole video on this, and definitely recommend this video, but where she was talking about Ixion, Pholus, and a Quaoar are in a long-term conjunction in Capricorn. Yeah. And so this coming year in 2024, all three of them together will be squared by the nodes of the moon. So I've been really feeling into that myself. It feels like, I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but
well, I work with Chiron, but and Characlo, but those are the only centaurs I really, I've tapped a bit into, but I don't really work with them. And the Ixion Quaoar thing is really quite, a mind bender right there.
Yeah.
And so the thing with Ixion that I got to in the story is that because he was then bound to a wheel in the underworld. He's another one of the underworld Kuiper Belt objects. And he had to keep repeating, give gratitude to your benefactor. So he had a kind of mantra he had to do. And he was, on this wheel in the underworld. It's like the karmic wheel.
Yeah.
And if you repeat your same mistakes or tell your same story, you're going to repeat that over and over again. And how do you break that?
Right.
So I've been learning some kind of Vedic mantra practices that have informed me about the powerful frequency of mantras to change levels of consciousness.
Would you associate that with Quaoar at all? With the, he's saying creation into being?
No, I wouldn't think of that as a mantra, but it could be. But what that got me thinking about the Quaoar singing and dancing, it got me thinking about Varda and Manwe, the
Yes.
two Kuiper Belt objects from the Tolkien mythology. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, whoever discovered those two were definitely Tolkien fans, but that it was allowed for them to be named for fictional characters
I
was
love it.
pretty amazing and gives them a special, tweak that's different than the rest of them. I mean, Tolkien was certainly a visionary, and I could absolutely believe the creation story that was published in the Silmarillion, which was published after he died, and some of his stories of all of those characters. But in the very beginning, he talks about the creation story, and that a thought in the mind of the creator created this circle of like angels that started singing. So it was an angelic choir that
Hmm.
they got all into their own voices, and they got into a whole symphony, which created a vision of the world in the mind of the creator. And
Hmm.
then there were 14 of them, including Manwe and Varda as the chief of the feminine and the masculine, to come down and create that vision.
Yeah.
But it was from singing that vision was created, that the world was created.
Yeah.
So that resonates to me with the Quaoar
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
When
I've
I
been starting to see like relationships between certain ones.
Mhm. And common themes and
Yeah,
yeah.
common themes. Yeah.
And I feel like again, I'll just reiterate this strong passion I have that, you know, nothing I'm saying, and I think you would agree, nothing you're saying is the truth or the answer. I would really invite all of us, everybody listening, to feel into your own truth with these things.
Mm-hmm.
But something that when I've been feeling into that Ixion Pholus Quaoar conjunction, and then it's going to be getting squared by the nodes of the moon. One thing that arises in me, in my own body, my own being, is the sense of Ixion being like a reminder that we have the choice, that, it's like what the spirit world says to me is it's inevitable that we are all source. We all are,
Mm.
we'll return to the light, et cetera, et cetera. And in this moment, there is a choice. Some people are maybe going to choose to stay stuck in that wheel of karma and to stay stuck like Ixion in the making choices that are very deeply harmful. And we don't need to make that choice. And so we also have Pholus, who is also related to, definitely very much related to familial healing, ancestral healing, all of that. And we have Quaoar, which again, I feel nervous because I'm not personally familiar with
Yeah.
the Tongva lineage, etc. But on a basic level, if I think of Quaoar being associated with the dancing and singing of creation into being, then it's like the three of them together feel like, especially with the nodes of the moon squaring them, feels like a collective and a personal individual opportunity to
Mm.
release the stories and the damage that we've all done as a collective by choosing to be in that more Ixion way of being. And Pholus, they're holding space to heal it.
Mm.
And Quaoar, that energy that's also us, helping us to come back into maybe what is our more natural way of being, which is ourselves as the sound of creation, the vibration of creation, right? That maybe
Yes.
that's part of what can help to heal, to let go, is through vibration, literally.
Yes. The frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need to change the frequencies. They are the waves of energy coming in are changing the frequencies. And we
Yeah.
can either accept them or not. And
Mm-hmm.
and just what you were saying, the singing and dancing, it goes also relates to promises, because they had that beautiful dance around the fire. And that was very Quaoar like too. So
Yeah.
there are these resonances in these creator deities that have some kind of universal aspect to them, I think, and that it's an invitation. I don't know if you saw this, but there was an issue of the NCGR journal a couple of years ago, and it was totally on the Kuiper Belt objects.
Ooh, no, I did not.
And so I can tell you which it was if you give me a minute here. It was oh, I'm not finding it so easily. But anyway, there was an article in there by Judith Hill called Sedna, Iris, and the Name Game. Because there was a whole dispute about naming Iris because they were calling her Xena. And I know Heather likes to say Iris Xena, which I really like because Iris certainly has a subtone of that Xena character,
Absolutely. Yes. That's how I feel.
So here's what Judith wrote in that article. She goes, I hope that this brief article will provide food for thought and encourage astrologers to seriously contemplate and, if possible, delay their assignation of influences to newly discovered members of our solar system. The real question is, why are we in a hurry to assign meaning at all? Yeah. Isn't it more provocative just to wait and see? Let's open our hands, minds, hearts, and psyches in wonderment and patience.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that really spoke to me.
And I mean, I'll say that when I hear people being very adamant about particular meaning, my first reaction is to feel angry. And then I step back. I take a minute and I step back. And then I realize, wait a second. Okay, well, that's how we've been taught. That's what our value comes from, right? Is to be the expert, to be the person who knows everything. So then I have some compassion, right? But I think it's really, really, again, so important that we keep saying this over and over again. We aren't the expert. We don't need to be the expert. Our value doesn't come from being the expert. And maybe actually we can be more valuable when we acknowledge we don't know. Truly, right? Because it allows so much more to come forward.
Yeah, that meaning, getting the meaning, it's like for a comfort level, we need to know what it means. And can we be open to the new possibilities that are emerging?
Yeah.
Even with just Chiron and Aries, not to mention the nodes, the North Node, not to mention Salacia, one of the light bringers of the Kuiper Belt objects. So yeah, can we be open to being in the moment? And what is that moment revealing to us?
Yeah, beautiful. And can I come to Manwe and Varda for 1 minute before?
Oh yeah, I thought this sounded like a good close, but
no, I know it was a perfect close.
There's always time for Manwe and Varda.
Yeah, no, just because they happen to be probably my favorite at the moment. I just want 1 minute on them. But it's also making me think of them because I was listening to something about them this morning, and so it's talking about Manwe, of course, being a god related to he's a creation god, but he's a god of wind and air, and but it also talks about him being related to poetry. And then it talks about, of course, Varda being the goddess of the stars, so she brings the starlight back to earth. And so with both of them, again, they feel like a reminder that among so many other things, that maybe our knowing actually doesn't need to necessarily come from our brain. Like it feels like none of these Kuiper Belt objects are encouraging us to be focused on the linear brain function. It feels like they're all helping us to open back to the knowing of wind, the knowing of song, the knowing of light, the knowing of the stars, the knowing of earth, the knowing of our bodies, right? Like the knowing of creation itself.
Of life. What is life? What is the meaning of life? Is there an answer to that? So yeah, that's really beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I just point out, so Varda is on what, the galactic center right now, and Manwe is close-ish to the first degree of the whole zodiac.
Yeah, I think it's gone on to one or two.
One or two.
I'm not sure right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very exciting. And I just encourage people just to choose one that sort of grabs your attention, and just kind of see, because they're Kuiper Belt objects from every continent now. I think they even named one from Antarctica, but I haven't followed up on that yet. But there's certainly Aardvark Girl from Africa. And there's Algira who's also a double object from Australia. And so there's something for everybody.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, and again, probably my favorite aspect of this whole conversation is that, yeah, that I love hearing your own journey with all of it. I love hearing how they have been coming to you, and I love feeling your compassion and dedication to being honoring of everybody.
I have to remember that too, I have to remember that too. And and you were saying that the archetypes are living. And when I was studying depth psychology and was reading James Hillman, he was saying the archetypes stay alive because of our engagement with them. And the meaning changes and evolves in some way, potentially as well. Exactly. And helps our consciousness, helps our awareness of the all that is, and however we want to play in that field.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kelley. Where can people find you? Is there anything in particular you want people to know about what you're doing right now?
Well, one thing is I have a new Substack platform now, and I love Substack. I'm able to post more and do more audios and put more images up. So I encourage you to go to starlady.substack.com and see what else is going on there. And then my website is www.heliastar.com, HELIA, representing the feminine aspect of the sun, heliastar.com. And I have a lot of stories and a lot of stuff on there to kind of entertain you for a while.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Yeah. And I'll just say one more time, you are doing great honor of being one of the guest speakers in the Infinite Soul Wisdom Astrology 101 course that I'll be hosting in 2024. And so if people are interested in that, I'll put the link to that also. And yeah, thank you so much, Kelley.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being open to this discussion. Yeah, which I've been thinking about a while now. Yeah.
I love it. Definitely love to keep going. Thank you.